Hey guys, Wiley Gun 1776. So this morning I was driving around in the car, listening to Sirius XM Patriot channel, and they had on a guest talking about the 2A and specifically HR 127. And he brought up some points around the gun registry, insurance, and licensing, but didn't really dive too far into it. So today what I wanted to do was kind of put my pink hat on and kind of talk about what some of those points are and what some of the left or center and left leaning people would be hearing when you're talking about these points, and kind of how to address some of this stuff and how to present the argument correctly. One good thing that he did bring up was the lack of, or not the lack of, but the response time for police to some of these shootings, and specifically he mentioned Sandy Hook. And with Sandy Hook, there was a 4.5 minute response time from when the first call came in to that time that the police actually showed up. And what he made a strong argument, or a strong impactful part for me, was he said, have everybody turn off their phone, turn everything off for 4.5 minutes and see how long that really is. And that to me is a powerful statement, because that is your response time from when an initial incident happens to when the police are showing up. And when you think about it, 4.5 minutes, when you're sitting there without your phone, without any distractions, 4.5 minutes seems like a lifetime. So to me that was impactful. But some of the other points he kind of fell short on, so I kind of wanted to address that. So like I said, I'm going to put my pink hat on today and kind of think more of the left side, and how exactly that thinking plays into some of these things. So before I do that, can you hit the like, subscribe, and comment button? And with that, if you are a new subscriber, please mention something in the comments below. I'd love to be able to interact with you and, give my perspective on some of these things. A lot of people are talking about the ammo shortage, and, get my perspective on that, as well as my perspective on HR 127 or really anything else. Let's dive into this. Let me put my pink hat on and kind of talk about this, and some of the talking points during the interview. And the person brought up the gun registry, but didn't really dive too far into the gun registry. Brought up insurance, that you're going to need insurance if you're going to be a firearm owner, as well as a licensing process. And he didn't go into really too much detail on this. And with my pink hat on, what I'm going to hear is, a registry, that's a good thing, because people should be registering their guns. Same thing with insurance. Well, to me, that's, if I'm center or left leaning, hey, insurance is great. Everybody, should be required to insurance, so you don't have, crazy people running around and, no insurance. And the other thing is the licensing. Again, if you're wearing the pink hat, you're thinking, well, licensing equals good. So, the talking points that he brought up were registry, insurance, licensing. With my pink hat on, I'm thinking, these are all great things, without really thinking and knowing too much about it. So today, what I wanted to kind of talk about, and I'll take the pink hat off now, but with the gun what I wanted to do was dive into a couple of different topics and kind of discuss some of these things if you're talking to left-leaning or center-leaning people, and kind of point out some of the nonsense with it, and then let them think about it. And first, let's talk about the gun registry. If you're on the left, gun registry, great. Government knows where all the guns are. But let's point that at, what you should be pointing out is the fact that by registering the firearm with the make, model, serial number, they're also in this bill requiring to tell you where you're storing that firearm, as well as making that registry then available to the entire public. So what that really is going to tell you is it's not going to deter anything. In fact, it's going to do just the opposite, because people with bad intentions are now going to know, hey, Wiley Guns has these firearms. here's where they're stored. And if we break into his home, here's what we can expect, right? Or your neighbor, ooh, let me take a look at my neighbor. Oh, they have so many firearms. It's just not a great thing to have accessible to the public, because why would you tell them? I mean, you might as well say, hey, all my jewelry, needs to be registered, so a burglar can look it up and say, oh, Wiley Guns has, this type of jewelry. You're just inviting bad things. So, as far as registering and having open to the public, mention those things, because a logical person would say, that kind of makes sense. Why would you want to tell people what you have in your house? Or why would I want to tell, and have accessible, what jewelry I have, or, anything else. I mean, it just makes your house more of a target. And the other thing is the licensing. Again, they're going to say, well, licensing, that equals a good thing. We already do background checks, right? They're done when you're purchasing a firearm. The only time you're not doing a background check is if you're selling it as a private sale. There is no gun show loophole. Anywhere you're buying it from an FFL, you're already going through a background check. So as part of this licensing, you're going to have to go through a psychiatric evaluation. And really, that's just an open-ended for interpretation. It comes into red flag laws with, will this person potentially do something? And, you're looking into the crystal ball. You can't predict the future. As far as a psychological evaluation, it's just a bad thing, But as far as what you can talk to with center or left-leaning people, with part of this licensing, they're also looking to get input from former spouses. Now, if anybody's divorced or anything, I'm sure that they're not going to have anything bad to say about you. And all you need to do is one person in your background that has an axe to grind with you to say something negative, and then all of a sudden you're off the list for licensing. And when you're denied the licensing, the repercussion is you've got to turn in all your firearms, turn in all your ammunition to the government, and you lose all that. So all you really need is one person with an axe to grind, and now all of a sudden, you're treated as a criminal. So the other talking point on this that you really need to talk about is this insurance. Because again, like I said, if you're on the middle or left, you're going to say, ooh, insurance, this is good. Well, that insurance is $800 a year. And if you think about it, what is that really going to cover? Not really sure what exactly it's going to cover in this bill, but if you're paying $800 a year, if you're in a low-income area where you have threats of crime, let's just talk about Sheila Jackson's area. In Houston, the median average family, not one per family income, is $46,000. Do you think they really have $800 sitting around that they can just throw out every year, for this insurance? So really all it is a tax to prevent people from who really need firearms and the protection in the low-income, high-crime areas from obtaining these things. To kind of dumb it down, my carry insurance that I have, that I would think a lot of you guys have, is about $13 a month, and that's $156 a year. So the $800 that they're proposing is 5 times as much. What are you getting? I mean, it's typical government that private industry can do it much more efficient at a much cheaper price. What am I getting? What more am I getting for my $800? It's not. It's just a tax to prevent people from owning guns. And one of the other talking points that you should really be talking about when you're talking to people in the center or left leaning are the magazine restrictions. And if you have any of these, you're going to be considered a felon. These laws really take the side and look at more of the criminal side than the law-abiding citizen. Who in their right mind would say to a law-abiding citizen that somebody's breaking into your home, hey, it's a good thing to have less ammo in your magazine than more? I mean, I don't think anybody would have that be able to make that argument. But they're looking at it from a criminal aspect of, let's limit the amount of capacity in in the firearm if you're committing a crime, which, you know, you're ignoring all these homeowners and everything else that, you know, you want to be able to protect your family. And by limiting the magazine capacity, you're certainly doing that. And where is the studies that that's actually going to do anything? So, you know, and then, you know, one final talking point with everybody would be about the penalties. So if you violate any of these things, where the gun registry, the licensing, the insurance, magazine restrictions, the penalties can range anywhere from $30,000 on the low side to $150,000. On top of that, you know, on the low side, that you'd be looking to be spending 5 years in prison, all the way up to 40 years in prison. All this for not complying with a registry. I mean, you're not, in my mind, really committing a crime. You're not doing any sort of armed, you know, you're not doing armed robbery or anything like that. You're, you know, it's a clerical thing. So these penalties are just absurd, you know, and I think anybody who thinks logically would say, you know, by not the insurance and all, following all these, is it really worth putting somebody in jail for 5 years because they can't afford to pay insurance on the firearm? You know, and really what you want to do is talk to people and say, listen, you know, we're not some crazy group that, you know, believes in, you know, everybody on the street should have a gun and you're just shooting at will. What we as a group want to do is we want to address crime. You know, we're not all these crazy people that are just, you know, far right extremists and not thinking logically. You know, this bill does nothing to do with addressing crime. All it has to do is disarming good people with the right to own guns. You know, and honestly, what we really need to be focusing on, and, you know, instead of this remove the Second Amendment debate, what really people need to focus on is enforcing penalties when someone actually commits a crime, enforcing and prosecuting, you know, the illegal, what I'm calling the supply chain of these firearms. You know, if you're convicted of a crime where there was burglary that involved stealing a firearm, increase the sentences there, right? You know, if there's a possession of a firearm from a felon, you know, that shouldn't increase the penalties there. You know, let's focus on those. Stop focusing on people like me and you that are legal gun owners that want to follow the law, that enjoy it as a sport. You know, that's where the focus is, and it's really about disarming people. You know, let's go after the criminals and stop putting them ahead of our rights. So with that, again, if you can like, subscribe, and comment below, that would certainly help the channel out. And, you know, hopefully this topic was good, because what you need to do is kind of think on the left a little bit, kind of think of their perspective. And instead of just getting into a yelling and screaming match that, you know, hey, I don't want to budge on the Second Amendment, it's good to point out some of the logical things and let them think about it. And then that's kind of how you're going to persuade them a little bit, instead of just saying, hey, you know, all gun rights are you know, intrinsic upon our rights. You know, you've got to kind of point out a logical step, point out some logical things in here, and, you know, present it instead of just talking about, hey, there's, you know, this bill brings up gun registry, brings up insurance licensing. Talk a little bit about the specifics of it and how some of those things there's actually negatives to those things. Because if you just throw out those key words, the left is going to hear that and say, oh, I'm all for this, and they're going to get behind these things. But you want to kind of dig down past these key words that the lawyers come up with, knowing that, you know, when you just say registry or licensing, if you don't really have an opinion, you're going to say, well, these are good things. So kind of what you want to do is get past that and kind of explain to people, you know, and be calm about it and just explain it. And then once it's explained logically, they, you know, the bell goes off to say, oh yeah, I see your point. You know, it's not such a crazy thing to kind of push back on. So with that, everybody, stay safe, stay educated, make logical decisions, and certainly carry every day.